Okay, so there are three types of lines we're going to be looking at, and we're going to be finding the equations of these lines. Today we are focusing on the perpendicular bisector, which is also called the right bisector. Now this is a line that is perpendicular to a segment at its midpoint. So if we just look at this triangle right here, we're focusing on this line segment. Now from the midpoint, there is a line that is perfectly perpendicular to the original line segment, and that is called your perpendicular bisector or the right bisector. Okay, so it's all in the name. Perpendicular means there's going to be some sort of negative reciprocal maybe, because that's what we should be thinking of, and bisector means to cut in half, which means we're going to need that midpoint. And we know how to find the midpoint, and we know how to take a negative reciprocal, so we're going to know how to find the equation of that line. Now, one little extra piece of information about a perpendicular bisector, kind of a special feature of it, is that any point on this right bisector is equidistant to the endpoints of the original line segment. So let's say I have this point right here. This point is the same distance to the endpoint as it is to this endpoint. Okay, I could choose another one right over here. This distance is the same as this distance, okay? And we're going to see that maybe later on, okay? But first things first, we have to figure out how to find the equation of that perpendicular bisector. So let's first plot the points L, A, and B on the grid provided. So I have 1, 4, right over there, -5, 2, right over there. So that's L, that's A, and B is at 3, -2. And that's B. Okay, we're trying to find the perpendicular bisector of LA, so I'm going to draw in line segment LA. Okay, that's what we're looking at. First thing we want to do is determine the midpoint of LA, and here is where special notation is important to keep you organized. Okay, so remember for midpoint we're averaging out the x coordinates, so 1 plus -5/2, and then 4 plus 2 for the y coordinates. And when we simplify that, 1 plus -5 is -4. When we divide it by 2 we get -2. 4 plus 2 is 6, divided by 2 is 3. So I'm just going to plot that point, and there's the midpoint. So I know my perpendicular bisector is going to start from there. What I also know is that the slope of my perpendicular bisector is going to be perpendicular to LA, which means I need to find the slope of LA. So I have my change in y, so 2 minus 4, over my change in x, -5 minus 1. 2 minus 4 is -2. -5 minus 1 is -6. Simplify it to make your life easier. So the slope of LA is 1/3. Now we're going to need that negative reciprocal or opposite reciprocal, and the notation I'm going to use is that little right angle right there. And the negative reciprocal of 1/3 is -3. So I know my perpendicular bisector is going to have a slope of -3. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line segment through that midpoint with that perpendicular slope. So my slope is -3/1, which means I'm going to go down 3 to the right 1, down 3 to the right 1, and now I'm just going to connect my dots for my perpendicular bisector. And there it is. But now we just have to find the equation. And the equation, that's no problem, because now we have our slope of -3 and we have a point. So let's go ahead and finish the question off. Our slope is -3 and our midpoint was -2, 3. So y equals -3x plus b. Put my slope in. Now I'm going to put my point in. 3 for y, -2 for x, and now I can isolate for b. So simplify and move the 6 to the other side. And now my equation is y equals my slope, negative 3x, plus my y-intercept, which in this case is also negative 3. Now, if I were to draw all three perpendicular bisectors of the three different line segments that created that vertex, they would all intersect at the exact same point, and that point is called the circumcenter. Okay, and we're going to talk about the circumcenter actually in the next unit again. On a separate piece of paper, I want you to write this question down, and I want you to try to find this perpendicular bisector on your own. Follow the steps that we just came up with on the previous page, and then we'll take it up. So you're going to have to pause the video. Okay, but I'm going to read it out. In triangle ABC, A is 6, 8, B is at negative 2, negative 2, and C is at 0, negative 4. And you want to find the equation of the perpendicular bisector of AB, which means you're going to need the midpoint of AB, you're going to need the slope of AB, so you can ultimately take that negative reciprocal. So go ahead, pause the video, and try it on your own. Okay, so my first step here is to find that midpoint, and that's coming from the fact that it's a bisector. So I'm going to find the midpoint of AB. So 6 plus negative 2 divided by 2, 8 plus negative 2 divided by 2. And if I simplify that, I end up with 4 over 2, which is 2, and 6 over 2, which is 2 over 3. And I know I'm going to use this later on to find that equation of the bisector. My second step is to find the slope of AB, because next I'm going to have to do that negative reciprocal. So change in y over change in x, so that we get negative 10 over negative 8, which we can simplify to positive 5 over 4 because we have that double negative. And this takes us to step 3, which is finding that perpendicular slope, which is going to be the negative reciprocal. So we change the sign from positive to negative, and we flip our sign. And this I'm going to be using to find my equation as well. And now we can go to step 4, which is finding the equation. So I'm going to use my slope first. Just going to plug that in. And now I can plug this point in for x and y as well. So 3 for y, and then 2 for x, which if you want, you can write as 2 over 1 for the multiplication of the fraction. And now we just simplify and isolate for b. So negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. 5 times 1 is 5. And now we can bring our fraction to the other side. And I know I'm going to need a common denominator, so I'm going to have to multiply 3 by 5 to get 15 over 5. And then when I bring negative 8 over 5, it's going to become addition. And now I can add my numerators. So 15 plus 8 is 23 over 5. And that's my y-intercept. And now we can put it all together. So our slope was negative 4 over 5. Our y-intercept is positive 23 over 5. And there's the equation of my right bisector. It's not very pretty, but that's okay. Okay, if you have any questions about it, just review the steps and understand the name. Okay, so I'm going to just write it one more time. What you should be thinking of. Perpendicular bisector. Okay, perpendicular means I'm going to have to take the negative reciprocal, which means I'm going to have to find a slope at some point. So find the slope of that line. Bisector means cut in half, which means I'm going to have to find the midpoint. So just by looking at the name, you should know that you have to start off by finding the midpoint of the line segment and the slope of that line segment. Okay, so just think about the name, do lots of practice, and it'll be good.